Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to do a cartridge review on the 22-250 Remington. So the 22-250 is kind of a tale of two eras. The first era is when it was a Wildcat, and then of course the second era is after Remington standardized it in the 60s. But way back in the 30s there was two really cool 22 caliber cartridges developed. The 220 Swift, which came from the 6mm Lee Navy case, and then a Wildcat design, which basically took the 250 3000 Savage and necked it down to 22 caliber. And it was called the 22 Varminter. And this happened in 1937. So for several decades you had the 220 Swift and the 22 Varminter kind of battling it out for which one was the fastest 22 caliber rifle. No other 22 caliber cartridge in those days would even come close to the velocity of the 220 Swift and the 22 Varminter. Cases such as the 22 Hornet and the 221 Fireball were definitely a more tame cartridge compared. And then in 1965, Remington finally decided we need to standardize this cartridge, and they in 1965 put their name to it, called it the 22-250 Remington, which, like I said, is taking the old 250 Savage or 250 3000 Savage made in 1915 and just simply necking it down to 22 caliber. Now the 250 3000 got its name because it was the first cartridge to go over 3,000 feet per second. So it had a lineage of being a fast velocity family, and the 22-250 is no different. So I'll give you a few quick, interesting facts about the 22-250. So like I said, in 1965, Remington developed it. But 2 years before that, Browning and their high-power rifle actually started to chamber it. Started to chamber a round that was not even commercially standardized, which is the only time I ever know of that happening. But it was a good move on their part, and it put them ahead of the curve. And it seemed pretty obvious that it was just a matter of time before somebody picked it up. Another interesting tip is the 22-250 was the first non-Weatherby cartridge to be chambered in the Mark V Weatherby rifle. And then one more quick tip. In Britain and Australia in the 1980s, it was a military round. Each one of those countries had a special air service which used a Tikka M55 rifle chambered in 22-250 as kind of an urban sniper rifle. So it did have some military use. So the big thing about the 22-250 from the beginning, it was a Varminting caliber or cartridge. Never really designed for medium or big sized game. It had a 1 in 14 twist rate, which was ideal for your 55 grain bullets and lighter, anywhere from 35 to 55 grains. Now, in our modern day, of course, you can still buy a 22-250. A lot of companies are coming out with a 1 in 12 twist rate. And even some, like your Browning X-Bolt, is in a 1 in 9. Now, that 1 in 9 twist rate is going to afford you a little bit heavier bullet, probably in the 65 grain class. But it's always been about speed, and it's always been about shooting varmints. The 22-250, even now, today, is still one of the fastest factory commercial chamberings available. It can shoot a 35 grain bullet upwards of around 4,400 feet per second, and it can shoot a 55 grain bullet around 3,600 feet per second. And if you're hand loading with a 55 grain bullet, you can definitely get past 3,600, probably more like 3,700. So let's do some comparisons. First, let's go back to the 30s and let's compare the original 22-250 to that 220 Swift. How do they compare? So the Swift case is definitely a little bit bigger. The case itself has an overall length of 2.205 inches compared to 1.912 inches on the 22-250. The capacity of water in the Swift is 46.4 grains compared to 42.4 in the 22-250. So about 4 grains more powder in that bigger Swift case. And just in case you're wondering, the Swift is going to shoot a 35 grain bullet a little bit faster, probably around 4,500 feet per second, and a 55 grain bullet upwards of around maybe 3,800, the very top end. So the 22-250 was always known as a little bit more efficient, definitely more versatile Varminton cartridge compared to the 220 Swift, and probably a little bit better and more efficient design. So let's talk about some more notable comparisons. So the Triple Deuce, the 222, came out in 1950. Very accurate, very cool cartridge. Had no parent case. It was a brand new design. Definitely a smaller case. So a 22-250 and a 220 Swift will use a large rifle primer, and they have the same bolt head or the same case head as what a 30-06 would have, that .473. So the Triple Deuce was definitely a little bit of a smaller case, and comparatively it could only shoot that 55 grain bullet about 3,100 feet per second versus 3,700. And then of course in 1957 the 5.56 came out, or the 223, and it was just a little bit of a step up, probably a 3,200 feet per second velocity out of that with that 55 grain bullet. Well, what about the 224 Weatherby Magnum? That case is actually very similar in overall length to the 22-250, 1.92 inches versus 1.912. And it's going to shoot a 55 grain bullet about the same, around 3,700 feet per second. So your Weatherby Magnum is going to be right in there with your 22-250 and your 220 Swift. Very similar velocity. So what about some more modern comparisons? So in 2018, the 224 Valkyrie came out. And the big thing about the Valkyrie is it came out in a 1-in-7 twist. It was literally designed to shoot the heavier bullets. So you're definitely going to be able to shoot, an 80 grain bullet, maybe even slightly more, out of that 224 Valkyrie. And the Valkyrie is a little shorter and smaller case, more fitted to an AR style platform. It can shoot a 55 grain bullet about 3,250 feet per second. So slightly more than a 223, but with that heavier twist rate, it's really not geared for the 55 grain bullet. It's more, suited to a heavier bullet. What about the 22 Nosler? Once again, a little shorter case. It's only 1.760 on the overall length of the case, but it also has a faster twist rate, a 1-in-8 twist. And it's going to be a step up from the Valkyrie. It's going to shoot a 55 grain bullet about 3,450. But once again, it's more suited for the heavier bullets and more for that, AR style length. So whether you're talking about the oldest cartridges in the 220 Swift and the 22 Hornet, or cartridges like the 222, 223, none of those cartridges are really that much better, or they are worse in velocity than the 22-250. Or maybe you're talking about modern cartridges like the 22 Nosler or the 224 Valkyrie. They're actually not even close on the velocity, but they're geared more toward the heavier high BC bullets. One last one I forgot to mention, in 1964, Winchester came out with a 225 Winchester, a rimmed cartridge with an overall length of the case of 1.930, slightly longer. Basically the ballistic twin of the 22-250, but it didn't catch on, and it's went away a long time ago. So whether you're talking about old cartridges or new cartridges, the 22-250 has held its own, and it is a speed demon, and it's a beast. I've talked about this on previous videos, but personally I would love to see an Ackley improved version of the 22-250 come out and be standardized. Because if you look at a 22-250, it has that same head size as a 30-06, and it has quite a bit of taper as it comes towards your shoulder and then towards your neck, which is what the original 250 3000 Savage case looked like. So you can really get a lot of advantage when you actually improve that case. For instance, with a 250 Ackley improved case, you're going to get about 47 grains of water with a 55 grain bullet versus 42.4 with a standard 22 250. So you're getting, around 5 grains more case capacity in that Ackley improved case. And a 35 grain bullet out of a 22 250 Ackley improved is going to go around 46 to 4,700 feet per second. It's crazy. And then that 55 grain bullet is going to be around 3,800 feet per second. Right there with the Swift, actually slightly more than that. Now the Swift and the Ackley improved are definitely going to be known as a barrel burner. So you might not want to go quite that far. I personally think it's a pretty cool cartridge. Now, if you compare the 223 to the 22 250, one is all about speed and performance. The other one is more about efficiency. The 22 250 will have a little bit shorter of a barrel life compared to the 223. But if you're looking to hunt coyotes or any kind of varmints, and you're probably going to shoot out of a bolt action rifle, you're definitely not going to be trying to shoot at 1,000 yards, and you don't want to try to jam it into an AR-15 because it couldn't. I mean, you could technically put a 22 250 in an AR-10 platform, but not a 15. Then if those things are the case, a 22 250 is the ideal cartridge for you. So here's mine. This is a Marlin X7. Bought this many years ago. It's actually the second 22 250 I've owned in my life. Now this one came with a 26-inch heavy barrel, and it's a pretty cool gun. The stock it came with was pathetic, so I've put this Boyd's thumb hole varmint stock on it. Got a little cheap bipod on it here at the moment, and a Vortex Viper scope. Nothing spectacular. Now obviously if I'm moving from stand to stand to stand calling coyotes, I'm not going to bring this. I have a different gun that I would bring for that. But if I do have a good spot with a good vantage point and I can see a long way, and I'm not going to be moving a whole lot and carrying this heavy rifle, this is the one I'd pick. I wish I could tell you I've spent a ton of time hand loading and shooting the 22 250, even though I've had it for a long time, but I really haven't. It was such an easy process. I got this Winchester case with a Winchester large rifle primer. I got Hodgdon 380, H380 powder, and these Nosler ballistic tips. And I knew I could get the velocity with this longer barrel pretty easily. And all I wanted to do was get over 3,600 feet per second. And so I started with 38 grains of H380. It was literally designed for the 22 250 with 38 grains. That's why it's called H380. I didn't quite meet my 3,600 feet per second goal. Ended up boosting it up to about 39.2 on the grains and got over 3,600. And I just stopped. And it's been a great load. And I've killed a lot of varmints with it, especially armadillos and especially groundhogs. I've killed a ton of varmints with it. It's been a great load. I do want to get back into it and mess around with hand loading. Do some more reloading and check some different bullets and maybe use some different powders, because once I got to that 3,600 feet per second and the groups really tightened up, I just stopped. But I've really enjoyed shooting it. When I was a kid and I heard my uncles talking about all the different rifles, I was convinced all I needed in life was a 30-06 and a 22 250. And both of those calibers have not let me down. I really like it. It's really been a fun cartridge to shoot. There was a time where I decided I wanted to get a custom 22 250 Ackley improved. And I wanted to get a 1-in-7 twist barrel, and I wanted to shoot maybe 80, but probably 90 grain Berger VLD bullets out of it. And I felt like it was going to be the coolest varmint rifle of all time, which it probably would have been. By the way, a lot of people have done something similar. But then I realized I was getting the 250 out of its league so far, it basically was going to end up being a 243. And so I've kind of pulled back on that dream since, and I've realized that's not what this is for. The 250 is not made, in my opinion, to shoot those heavy bullets, even though it would be very cool. Like, you might as well jump up to the 6mm if you're wanting to shoot 1,000 yards, in my opinion. And if you're wanting to shoot, 80 to 90 grain bullets, you might as well just get a 6mm. So I think you need to stay in your lane. I actually made a video about it. Stay in your lane and realize where the 250 excels. Now, if I ever did, if they ever did standardize the 250 actually improved, I'd be very tempted to get it, but I'd be happy with like a 1 in 9 twist, or even a 1 in 12, and I'd probably still shoot a 55 to 65 grain bullet out of it, and I would still shoot varmints with it, because that's what it's made. Back when it was the 22 Varminter, and then it became the 22-250, and even today, in 2022, this is an outstanding cartridge, and is one of my favorite overall cartridges of all time. It was number 5 on my list that I put out not too long ago. Do you have a 22-250? Do you have experience shooting it? I really enjoyed in my 243, 7mm Odd 8, and 280 actually improved videos the stories I was told about people that have used it all over the world, or used those cartridges all over the world. So please tell me, do you hunt deer with this? Is it legal to hunt deer where you live? Is it your coyote gun? Is it your prairie dog gun? What's your personal experience with it? What kind of hand loads do you shoot out of it? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Please leave a comment and like the video if you found it interesting at all. And until next time, have a great day and take care.